The purpose of this tutorial is to help you go through and see if franchising is a viable option for WU in case 18. So what we're going to do is we'll go to week 7 and we'll select the module. We'll find the Sushilicious evaluating cost and revenue. Oops, wrong one. There we go. The Sushilicious franchise worksheet. And really the purpose of this is I want you to get a feel of how franchising actually works. The case came in and goes, well, he wants to franchise, and if he franchises, then there'll be some money available maybe to do some things. Well, let's really take a look at that and see what that means. And so we're going to call up the franchise worksheet template. So I'll click on it. It'll load down here. And I'll bring that up. And we should see the template here. And if you'll notice over here on this particular side, you'll see the franchisee profit and loss monthly average. And this looks very, very similar to what we did for WU when we were trying to figure out what his net profit was. And so we're going to do a similar thing here. I want to walk through and talk about this. Actually, I'm going to put numbers in it and have that available after the discussion board closes for the original post. But I just want to give you a little explanation and what some of the differences are. For instance, the sales would be the same. Whatever the sales we had there, I believe was $100,000. Our food cost, which are our prime costs, labor costs, those should stay the same. But we have a few things in here that we're starting to add because these are common to all franchise organizations. There's a royalty fee that is typically a % of gross sales. So if the royalty, say for instance, is, close this, the royalty for instance that I have to pay to the franchisor to use the name in their system, say is 5% of sales, then that means that I have to pay 5% of my gross sales, or 5% of my $100,000 I make, to the franchisor. There's usually an advertising fund, which I'm required to contribute a certain percentage to, and that advertising fund goes to the franchisor and is used for the benefit of the franchisee, but it may not be directly for the benefit. So for instance, if I've got a 1, 2, 3% advertising fund, I may end up having to give that to the franchisor, and the franchisor may develop marketing plans for me and then be professionally done, and I have to pay for those to have them run, like on newspaper or TV, but the production costs are covered out of this advertising fund. And then lastly, most franchise organizations require that you have some type of local advertising or advertising that is specifically for your location. Okay, so these are three things, whenever we look at it from WU's original, that it's going to go directly into the expense side and is going to reduce the gross profit. So those are the things we're looking at here. Okay, our occupancy costs, I believe we've discussed that a time or two about what it's going to cost for us to be in, and I think that number was there. So what you should see when you get finished here is that the net profit for the original unit, at least the way it was configured, is going to be less. And part of that is because I am paying the franchisor for some expertise and for the use of their name and their business system. Okay? So that's what this is. This is just a reconstruction. The other thing that this does is it's going to give me an idea, and it should give me an idea that if I bring a franchisee in, that their sales should be similar. And so every one of these units that come online, I should expect some type of profit. But my profit is going to come really from the royalty fund. Even if they come down here and they have $10,000 net profit, the franchisor doesn't get that. The franchisor is only going to get what the royalty is. The second part of this is to see what it costs to start a franchise. A lot of times we'll go through and go, well, I'm going to franchise that. And if I franchise that, then I'm going to get money for royalties and that type of thing, and so it's going to be a good deal for me. So there's three main things that you have to have when you do a franchise startup. And these are the minimal, and what numbers you come up with here are probably going to be considerably less than what it actually costs, but I do want to get you to have a feel for it. And you'll see these as you go through and read the IFA and other outside material that you're required to for the discussion board. But in general, you're going to have to come up with the cost of trademark registration. Okay? You have to have a registered trademark because that's really what the customer's buying. They're buying that brand. And if everybody in town can use that particular name, you certainly are not going to pay a royalty or a fee for other people to be able to use that. The other two items here that are important is your franchise disclosure document, the FDD. And the FDD is basically required by the Federal Trade Commission to offer a franchise. And it goes through in two parts. One, it tells the person that's buying the franchise what's to be expected. And the second part of it is the actual contract. So if I become a franchisee, I'm signing a contract, and usually for multiple years, and have other fees that are associated with that. But this is a contract. This is an agreement, and it has to be redone every year. It has to be updated, et cetera, et cetera. But the franchise disclosure document is one that's required, and it is not inexpensive. We'll put it that way. So you'll be able to find a little information on that, and I want you to come up with a number of what you think that how much a trademark registration is to get your mark registered, how much the franchise disclosure document is. And then the last thing you're usually required to have is an operations manual. So if I am going through and I'm going to put somebody in the business, I need to give them the standards that they need to follow and what will give them guidance to help them be successful. So the operations manual is a requirement in a franchise organization. And so those are the three main things, and there's many, many other things, but I just want you to get a feel for what those dollars are. So Woo is going to have a certain amount of startup costs associated with just offering a franchise. He just doesn't go out one day and put an ad in the Irvine, California newspaper or San Francisco or wherever and say, hey, why don't you become a franchisee and send me some money? There's a lot more to it. So there's some upfront costs that must be considered on that. Okay. The third part of this is the franchise profit and loss, and it's based on the monthly average. Okay. So again, the only thing the franchisor is going to get is the monthly royalty. So this number down here isn't as important to the franchisor. It is, because if I can't produce more value than you're paying me in fees, then I'm going to have a hard time selling a franchise. But my royalty is going to be some percentage, probably somewhere between 2 and 8% of total sales here that I'm going to get as my royalty. And I'm going to have some kind of monthly expenses here. So whatever this number is that you're going to come here, you're going to look at that and put that over here. Whatever your monthly expenses are, and you go, well, what would that be? Well, it's like any business. If I am going out and I'm selling a product, which is a franchise, and I am going to give some type of expertise, and I'm going to look after it, I'm going to control it, I'm going to make sure that the franchisees are operating according to the agreement. I'm going to help them with their marketing programs, those type of things. There's going to be some expense involved. And again, I don't think that Woo's going to be able to do this. If he does, and by this point you should understand that Woo cannot be the marketing manager, cannot be the operations manager, and cannot be the franchise director simultaneously. Something will give, something will fail. And so he's either going to have to bring people in to do one or the other of the jobs. So there's going to be some monthly expense. So really this is an exercise to go through and say, what's the monthly royalty? What do you think a reasonable monthly expense is? Is he going to have any profit? The other thing you may look at that is, and I'll do this on the sheet that'll come up after the posting of the original, is that you may take a look at the net profit that comes in. You go, well, at this particular monthly royalty rate, in order to break even, which you remember from our last one, I've got to cover these expenses. So that may tell you that I need 5 franchisees. I may need 2. I may need 100. Who knows what it is. But it's going to tell you that the franchise is going to produce a certain amount of royalty, it's going to cost me a certain amount, and that it may take a while for me to even make a net profit. Or it may tell you that, boy, you've done a really good thing here, and away we go. Okay, well, that's just a little explanation on that. The other thing that is really key, and I'll stress this again later too, is that this exercise is only to show you really how a franchisor gets their income. So if you come down here and go, well, every location has $15,000 in net profit, then that's what I'm going to make as a franchisor. That is not correct. Company stores may make $15,000 a month, but a franchisor only gets a percentage of the gross. So the franchisor, of course, always wants the top line to be as big as possible, because the bigger the top line, the more money they make. And in theory, the bigger the top line, the more they do. Okay, so anyway, there you go with that. Try to work through that, answer the discussion board, and I'll have an explanation on this after the original post.